Let's get to running backs. We have at the top of our rankings Christian McCaffrey, Chris Carson, and Ezekiel Elliott. A pretty good triumvirate of runners there. One guy to keep an eye on is Dalvin Cook. We are recording this earlier in the week, so his injury issues haven't really been settled yet. If he plays this week, I imagine he will be at least in our top 5, but maybe top 3 even. So be sure to keep an eye on him and remember that these rankings can change and will change as the week progresses. Pete, who are you looking at this week? Guys you're relatively high on. Anyone you would want to include in the top tier at the position?
Yeah, I'm absolutely in love with Joe Mixon this week, who has been trending completely in the right direction. Now gets a dream matchup against the Dolphins. And I love his involvement both in the running game, where he's gotten 23 and 25 attempts the last 2 weeks. And last 3 weeks, he's been seeing more targets as well, which is really encouraging. He's been low owned all year. I think he's a really, really talented player. I don't think Miami wants anything to do with winning this game, given that all the tanking that they've done and the players they're throwing out there. So I love Mixon. It's a great bet on talent. Obviously, the Bengals have been just pitiful all year, but this is as good of a matchup as you're going to see. So he's one of my favorite plays overall. I think you can make compelling arguments for a lot of guys at the very top, just in terms of raw projection. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey is going to be the top guy. But after that, Zeke, Carson, Saquon, I think are all in consideration. And one guy who's rating pretty well, I'm actually quite low on that we'll get to here in a bit.
Sean, who are you relatively high on?
I'm pretty high on Adrian Peterson this week. It's a rare time where we get the Redskins as favorites. So that, that always helps Adrian Peterson's outlook. He has a touchdown 3 straight. And with Darius Geis gone, he actually sort of absorbed his role, and his routes run per dropback shot up to 35% last week, and Chris Thompson stayed the same, right in the mid 40s. So he actually matched Chris Thompson with three targets and 3 catches. And typically Adrian Peterson's a liability in a full PPR format like DraftKings, but if we can bank on 2 to 4 receptions this week and possibly 20 or more carries, he's in a smash spot at 5K. So I'm pretty high on AP this week. And Leonard Fournette, as always, I think he's pretty overlooked at the low 7K range. At Atlanta, he's coming off a season high, 89% of routes run. He always has the potential for 6 or more catches, but for some reason Gardner Minshew doesn't like to dump it off as much as Nick Foles. But he has that potential this week, and he's due for touchdown regression. Unlike Alvin Kamara, who has to deal with Latavius Murray, Drew Brees sneaking in from the 1, and Taysom Hill bullshit around the goal line. Leonard Fournette's the main guy. He's going to get every touch inside the red zone. So only 3 touchdowns on the year is a bit of an outlier. So I think he's due for touchdown regression, and I'm looking for him to score this week. So at 7,200, I'll have a ton of exposure on Fournette.
Raybon, who do you like?
Going back to the Seahawks Cardinal game, I think that game is going to be a pretty high scoring game. I also like Kenyan Drake again this week. Now he didn't catch a pass last week. He obviously got the 4 rushing touchdowns, but he was running a route right on about 50% of the dropbacks, which he's been in the 40 to 60 range over the last 3 games. So I think if this game kind of goes with Arizona down, he'll get more involved in the passing game. And Seattle's also been a below average run defense. And as far like on the ground, Drake is getting a pretty huge share of the running back carries. David Johnson's not mixing in at all. That he's got 3 carries last game, 3 carries the game before, 4 the game before that. So Kenyan Drake, 83% of the carries over the last 2 weeks, 81% over the last 3 weeks. I think he's going to kind of be their main means of offense over these last couple games of the season. He's going to kind of be that focal point that we saw against San Francisco, and Murray in the pass game are going to kind of feed off that.
All right, so there are 2 guys I like a decent amount, and Joe Mixon, I'm with Pete on that one. For a guy who's having what feels like a total shit burger of a season, he's still like pacing for around like 1,400 scrimmage yards, which is basically what he did last year. And, he's doing it in far worse circumstances. So like his situation. And then Mark Ingram, I think people are just relatively low on him in general because he's not a good pass catcher, or let me rephrase that. He's a decent pass catcher, but he's not getting pass catching opportunities in his offense this year. And he's, being vultured with a lot of rushing production by Lamar Jackson, but he's still getting a ton of goal line carries and also some red zone targets too. So, how many more touchdowns does this guy need to score before, he starts getting some respect? But, I think a good matchup against Cleveland. Cleveland, I believe, ranks number 28 in PFF rush grade on defense. And the Ravens are obviously prolific running the ball. They run more than any other team, and they run more efficiently than any other team. So a lot to like about the matchup for Ingram. On the low end, Peter, you kind of teased it earlier in the show. Who are you looking to fade?
Yeah, I think Alvin Kamara is a clear fade at this point, and maybe not clear. I've played him a ton this year, but some pretty compelling evidence against him, and we just saw it again on Monday night. Now he's 7,500. Since that high ankle sprain, he just has not been the same player, and obviously a long stretch without touchdowns. But yeah, at 7,500, I think there's more compelling options, and I love Alvin Kamara as a player. I think, once he gets right, he's still going to be that same electric back, but we just haven't seen that burst. And just the eye test last night on Monday was not good for Alvin Kamara. So I think I'm comfortable fading him even with his workload. I know he's rating well and we have a high projection on him, but I think he's a pretty clear fade. And I have a stat that I'll pull up here in a second. Kick it to someone else. I'll have that.
Yeah, Pete, I'm with you there. My notes. So Kamara is the guy that I wrote in the outline that I wanted to fade, and my notes are 2017 and 18 isn't walking through that door, which it seems fairly obvious at this point. But yeah, Kamara has really underwhelmed, and especially if you think of him relative, like even in season long leagues, relative to what you would have had to invest in him. You took him instead of Christian McCaffrey, instead of Saquon Barkley, instead of Zeke. It hasn't worked out for Kamara investors. Pete, do you have that stat yet?
Trying to pull it up. It's from the PFF guys. I retweeted it, and I should have had it up initially. But basically, his elusiveness and his missed tackles is just way down since a high ankle sprain. And we've seen that as well from Saquon Barkley. I mean, obviously, he finally did it against the Dolphins, but that's been an injury that I think just people – obviously, the players come back a little earlier than we anticipate, but it's one of those things that's really tough. And here it is. Alvin Kamara per Pro Football Focus. Before the ankle injury, his avoided tackle rate on runs was 34%. His avoided tackle rate on catches was 27%. And then after the ankle injury, his avoided tackle rate on runs 13% versus 34%, which is way down. Avoided tackle rate on catches is 14%. That doesn't include the Monday Night Football game either. So, yeah, there's so many things that are pointing to him just not being himself, and high ankle sprains are just really tough to come back from.
Sean, who do you dislike this week?
Yeah, so just real quick to follow up on Kamara. I haven't. He's pretty high in our models. I haven't updated yet after the Monday night game. So after this, I'll be updating, and I'm sure he will see a significant drop. Everything you guys mentioned, and like I said, he has some pretty stiff competition around the goal line. So that's why his touchdowns have been pretty low. The guy I'm low on this week is Josh Jacobs at 6,700 at LA. And, he saw 26 touches last week playing through that injured shoulder. I thought that was, showed a lot of courage by him. It seems like a pretty painful injury. And you figure it was because of the last game in Oakland. That narrative had something to do with it. They had a lead for most of the game, but, with their playoff chances all but gone, I feel like they're going to just take it easy on him. There's no reason to give him over 20 touches here. And, they're 5.5-point road dogs. This isn't really a game script where you'd want to play Josh Jacobs. He doesn't have more than three receptions in any game this year. I don't think that's changing this week. So at 6,700, I'm going to be off of Josh Jacobs this week.
And Raybon, what about you?
For me, it's James Conner, 6,500. That's just a little too much for me. With Pittsburgh still working in 4 backs into the rotation, you never know how the game script could kind of turn out or exactly how they're going to use those guys. Benny Snell took a couple of goal line snaps last week. Nothing to show for it, but I think it's kind of a slippery slope with Connor over that 6K mark, and he's in a pretty substantial committee. And then you have the Jets, who they're banged up on defense, but the Steelers, they're not the Ravens as far as running the football, and the Jets still rank number 2 in run defense DVOA. So I think it's a tougher matchup than I want at that price. And 4 backs working in, there's just like a lot of volatility, that I think something could go wrong where Connor, misses out on a touchdown or something like that, or just gets scripted out of the game, or they're using Benny Snell to kill clock or something. And he's also been an in-game injury risk, so fading him at 65.
All right, Sean, give us the running back prop.
So we're going to go with Kenyan Drake, total rushing and receiving yards at Seattle. I have it over under, this is a tough one, 76.5. And it's pretty incredible that he seems to be relatively healthy and just, 2-3 touches a game kind of guy. When's the last time we've seen a top 5 pick just get, demoted like this?
I don't know.
Can't think of anybody.
What was his name?
That's like completely healthy. And
the Chiefs.
Larry Johnson?
Yeah, Larry Johnson with
Holmes, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, because Johnson took over for Holmes. It was Jamal Charles.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, I think.
That was back when you would just be drafting the Chiefs running back. It didn't really matter who it was.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was 20 years ago?
It's a great question on the prop. I think Drake's a good one. I need to look into Seattle's injuries. They had a lot of guys on defense out last week. And I also saw Bobby Wagner on the ground. I don't know if that's something, that I really want to dig into. So I'll take over, I guess, given all the potential injuries. But I would love to take under if I knew Seattle's defense was getting healthier. But that's something to monitor. Like Bobby Wagner would be a huge impact.
Yeah, they're saying his ankle injury is not considered serious.
Okay.
So
back reverse.
All right. Hey, Sean, what was the line you said again?
76.5.
Okay. I'll take the under, but just barely.
And I'm going over. I think this is going to be a back and forth, high scoring game. The over tends to hit when Seattle's at home a lot more. I think this is one where, it's just going to be a game where Seattle is going to be able to put up points on Arizona. It's going to be an up-tempo game. And Drake has looked like their best back since the moment he came to the team. And I think especially after this game, they're just going to keep feeding him. 22 carries out of the 25 backfield carries, and he's still running around half the backfield routes. And probably would run more if there was a heavier passing script as well.